We'll go now to, let's do the submission on that's the next one, local government systems improvement. Right.
So we're seeking your approval to lodge the submission on the Local Government System Improvements Amendment Bill today. The submissions on the bill are actually due today, so should you agree to lodge the submission, we will do that this afternoon. You're provided an overview of what's in the bill and our proposed submission during two council workshops, and provided an opportunity for written feedback at the drop-in session. Following the feedback from councillors that we received, the stance on the submission and the key points have not significantly changed compared to what was presented to you at the workshop. At a really high level, those key points are that the bill isn't really targeting the real drivers of rates increases, and we question its effectiveness to ease rates increases. The council is already planning to spend its rates revenue on the list of core services, essentially, that are listed in the bill. That councils still need and retain some discretion on spending to best represent the community's interests. Some of the proposals are welcome around things like the lending arrangements, the chief executive's term, the targeting of DCs and such, but the government should continue to do more to ease the regulatory burden on councils. Some of the proposals do have risks, which the submission points out that need to be managed. So this is around benchmarking, the rates cap, the tikanga Māori provisions, standing orders and such. But the submission has been updated based on some of the councillor feedback that we received. So, for example, we have mentioned the return on investment for non-core activities. We've mentioned the idea about getting GST back on rates and or the government paying rates. Urging the government to do more to ease the regulatory burden more generally on councils, emphasising the cost to council of auditing requirements, and providing examples of the impact of unfunded government mandates. For instance, we added examples around chlorine, the water levies, the speed limits and road crossings, and generally note that the central and local government should have more collaborative approach to funding. So that at a really high level is the submission and the update.
Right, thank you. I think that's covered it really well. Oh yeah, yep. So do we have a mover for it? Pauline, did you move it? Andre will second it. Debate is Pauline. Yep. Yeah, so thank you for that. That's great.
It's been an excellent submission in my view. Look, this bill attempts to address factors that are causing rates increases so that we can ease pressure on households. It's well intended to try and address the cost of living crisis, but I think the government's attempting to put a disproportionate emphasis on targeting councils as responsible for this. Key drivers of rates increases are out of our hands, as we know, and they rest fairly and squarely with the government to address. Inflation, insurance, house prices, rents, groceries and butter, for example. So stop pointing the finger at councils, and I think the government should be looking more carefully at their own spending. The government has decided to define our core services. I'm not even sure they really understand what local government does. And they've forgotten to include regulatory requirements like this submission and the many others we've been looking at over the past couple of years, and also the unfunded government mandates. They've removed the 4 wellbeings. So swimming pools, parks, walking, safe streets, they're all well-being. Where's the line? No one knows. The government is putting out sound bites of derision towards local government. It's unfounded and merely to distract attention from the government's own tardiness in easing cost of living for residents. The councils already spend 93% of rates income on our definition of core services. Another bill being rushed through Parliament. This was born on the 15th of July. Another unnecessary pressure council has to bear. And these are time constraints, very time constrained to respond to these. And these bills are of dubious value in my view, and not to mention the public who are invited to participate in consultation if they're super quick. So I see the government has included benchmarks for assessing council performance, and I can only assume government will also be introducing a future levy for councils to pay for this, as they have done with the water levy, which now costs us $1.7 million a year. But we must not allow these costs to affect our rates. And once again, the government's pointing the finger while loading the councils up with more costs and leaving us with only rates as a source of revenue to pay for these costs. And how about some recognition of the amazing work that councils do and the 20 billion plus that we pump into the economy every year? And speaking for this council, it is our vision and investment in our city's amenities and our events that are making Christchurch a city where people are coming in droves to work and live and recreate. So is investment a core service? What about disaster relief? Is that a core service? We just heard today that the Peaks Peninsula ones cost us close to $7 million this year. So again, it's disingenuous of this government to be pointing the finger at councils who bear the cost of delivering over 40% of this country's infrastructure, and for the government to be using councils as a distraction from the government's own lack of action to address the cost of living crisis. So rather than promoting a difficult, if not impossible to assess rates cap, how about the government look at other sources of income funding for councils, for instance, the Crown paying rates on schools and hospitals, as has been pointed out in the submission. So thank you for the submission. I'll be supporting it today, and I hope you all do too.
Okay, we've got heaps now. So we've got Yanni, then Mark wants to speak. No, you can. And then Sarah. So Yanni.
Yeah, I mean, thank you to staff for the submission, and I do concur with the comments that have been made. I would just ask, under like where we've given examples, it'd be really good to quantify it. I've just had a look at the KiwiRail costs, and that is $50 million. $50 million that they've put on us. And even when we get the good news, we get the bad news. So we get the good news that the KiwiRail have agreed to rescope the Scrutton's Road crossing down from 6 million to 4 million, when we suggested spending 1.6. So our design, council's design, was 1.6. KiwiRail came up with 6 and then revised it to 4. It's still a massive impact on us as a city. And that's only on one project. So I just think where we can quantify the examples, it's much more significant. For example, under the chlorination issue, my understanding was that if the worst case scenario was realised by what central government want us to do, we'd be spending $500 million, 500 million, apparently, on meeting their things that they had put in place. So I support the submission, and I think the more we can quantify the impact of what government have done to us and force us to pay for, then the better we will be in terms of arguing our case. But it's completely unsustainable to continue to rely on rates to fund the things that we need to do when government is imposing such significant costs on us without the funding support.
Sarah.
Kia ora. Not much else left to be covered. Thanks to colleagues for doing that, and the submission is really good. I mean, in opposition, National campaigned for localism. They said that councils should decide how to run their cities. In opposition, and now National Party and others all say that we should be listening to our residents. How can we listen to our residents when what they call for, when they are no longer going to be able to do? Christchurch should be making correct decisions for Christchurch. They shouldn't be made in Wellington for us. And our residents shouldn't have their valued opinions and their needs and desires for the city cancelled by central government.
Just Aaron.
Yeah, I'll chime in with a couple of bits. I support Yanni's calls around KiwiRail. And all that needs to be done to see whether it's financially viable to keep rail. It sounds like it's too expensive to make it safe. So does rail have to go? So good point there, Yanni. And then the other one is around the 5% rates cap. There's actually a lot of people in the city celebrating that concept and really looking forward to it if it does come in. And yes, we do hear from our ratepayers every year. We usually hear from the ones that want us to spend more money. And if we get 1,000 submissions or submitters come into the annual plan, that's 0.25% of the people of Christchurch coming in to talk to us. So yeah, there is a lot of people celebrating the concept of a rates cap, and I'm one of those on behalf of the people of Hillwood.
Mark.
Thank you. Yeah, concurring with the comments there around the KiwiRail, the amount it's costing us that we're being milked on our projects is seen, and we need to find a way to work better in that space. So if we can work with government to to reduce our exposure to that through some reforms, then let's do it. But also around the idea of rates caps, well, we're going to need the government to step up and come in with an olive branch of, okay, we might want a rates cap on what you can do, but we'll start paying rates on our government properties, or look, we'll give you the GST back on the rates that we take because you're charging rates. We've got to find a way to work with government. They have talked prior to being elected about localism and how important it is to them. Well, let's work with you. Let's work with our people. Let's work together on solutions here rather than just top down. This is what we're going to do. We need to get what works for our city. We need to get what works for our territorial authorities. That shouldn't be dictated by Wellington as to how our cities run. So let's get this submission and listen to what we're saying and start to work with us instead of working to us.
Andre.
Thank you. Yeah, and I think it is very hypocritical of government to send us the bill for regulatory nonsense and then spending money on regulatory nonsense. But they've also got a really good point about what councils have to spend on. We have to spend so much money on long-winded, drawn-out processes thanks to an outdated Local Government Act, and it is time to reform it, and it's a really good thing they are, because this could well make it easier for us to do a whole lot of things and make it cheaper to do a whole lot of things, and that needs to happen. So they've got a really good point. Often it will cost us more on the paperwork than the job itself. So yeah, they've absolutely got a point, so that needs to be done. And I think the staff have done a really good job of capturing dozens and dozens of different things and pointing out where we're at and what needs to happen. So I cautiously welcome reform and with some nervousness.
Tyron?
I just really want to say, I mean, real productivity gains for an organisation like this council or any council across the country come from, they don't come from banging on and us arguing about like the minutiae of like speed bumps and stuff, right? Like the real productivity gains come from better systems, better processes, better methodologies in delivering things, better reporting, more skilled people doing analytical stuff, better data, stronger data, cleaner data, shared data across the country, all of these things, right? That is where the real productivity gains come from.
I think he wants a job.
Let him finish.
So we need to invest in our council and in our local government to be able to do these things, and that stuff actually does cost, and sometimes it does require consultants, and sometimes it does require investing in like good systems, good applications, good software, and that sort of stuff. So, I'm cautiously, I think, along with Andre, about what this will mean, cautiously optimistic about what this might mean. Rates capping, I just don't think is, look, if government is going to help us fund those system and productivity improvements, I'm all for it, right? But, if they're going to constrain us from doing those things that we need to do in order to become a better organisation and share those things with all of the public entities across the country, then that's great. So again, cautiously optimistic, and we'll just see how it falls out. But I'm definitely in favour of standardisation.
Cool. So you wrap up. Just for me, I maybe have a different understanding of how we've written this, because to me this is very balanced in terms of saying this is a piece of legislation that has some pros and has some cons. Personally, I like the idea of fiscal restraint, but that will be no surprise. In terms of what it does, though, it gives some really good examples of where actually some additional revenue levers would be good for Christchurch. If we think about the GST around housing, actually, if we encourage, potentially more development in the CBD, that might be a way to get more GST in that tops up the coffers. Maybe we should have done this before the last paper, but I think this is very balanced and gives practical solutions. So I don't see this as a critique of government. I think this is refinement of a direction they're sending. I think, as the Mayor said, we'd be silly not to acknowledge it. We've already started to in the LTP paper that we did earlier, what everyone agreed to, which was let's look at scenarios following the election of what a rates cap looks like. So I think it's good we offer our view. There'll always be things that we need to refine. But I tend to agree with Aaron. The people I talk to every day are fundamentally hurting at the moment. We probably around this table are quite immune from it. We all earn over $100,000 a year. So it's probably at some stage we would be immune from it. And sometimes, that does fall into the conversation where we say, actually, these rates just need to be spent. Actually, if you're making a decision between feeding your family or paying your rates, I know where people are going to land and it's feeding their family. So I just caution us as a group. Sometimes we do get too immune from the real world. And I think actually fiscal restraint is a good thing. So the bill and the submission we've made is quite balanced in my view. Pauline, do you want to wrap up?
Yeah, thank you. And look, a rates cap, it does sound great, but I think personally it's over ambitious, and I think it will need a lot of work to try and come up with a model that's going to work without unnecessarily constraining councils' ability to deliver. For example, I think it would require the Crown to commit to bearing the costs of disasters, whether they're natural or man-made. Look at Christchurch, we've had to bear the earthquakes, fires, the floods, the mosque attack, COVID, now the cost of living crisis. I don't think we could possibly have funded those without a cap, with a cap, I mean. And how will they set a cap across so many different councils with different needs and at different stages of growth and infrastructure investment? And how much would this system cost the government to implement anyway? So to not support a rates cap, or I'm not saying I don't support a rates cap, but I'm saying I'm very worried about how that would actually work. But it doesn't mean that I support high rates increases. I certainly don't. And I know this council has worked very hard to keep our rates increase down to effectively what it was under 5% anyway this year if you take Te Kaha out. So what governs those decisions for us and colours it is actually democracy and the 3-year cycle of having to reapply for our jobs. So I think we covered in that regard, and the public do put pressure on us, and rightly so. I don't think that I'm immune to the cost of living crisis for people and how difficult it is now, but I think once again, the government's got to do its part in sorting out cost of living for people. If people aren't earning enough money to live, that comes to the government, not us. So and I like what Councillor Peters said, let's work in partnership together. Let's not verse each other. And Sam, you addressed that as well. Let's not make it a war, but let's get a true partnership happening so we can understand each other, and government understands what councils does a lot better. Thank you.
All in favour?
Aye.
Against? That's carried. Cheers.